All right, lots to cover today. We got live NFL trade deadline stuff. Maybe we'll get a last minute one at the buzzer. We got crypto pumping. We got Andy crushing in the NBA streets. We got an NBA trade to discuss. And, naturally, we'll probably hop in some early week 9 underdog contests. It's the club. I'm Peter Pan. Let's go. All right, welcome to the club. We got ANDY8052 and Clay, or is that Red Zone Scott Hansen down there?
It's the witching hour where wins become losses and losses become wins.
Yeah, shout out to Clay, dressed up. And this is a specific version of Scott Hansen. It's not Scott Hansen on Red Zone. It's Scott Hansen appearing on the randomizer, correct?
That's correct. That's correct. We had to go super niche for the Deposit Kingdom family out here. Couldn't just go suit and tie. Felt a little bit too on the nose. How to give it right for the people out here in the chat. So,
Andy, how are you doing? Any Halloween plans or just blasting off at NBA?
No, nothing too much. I'll be. I've already maxed NBA for the day, and so. I think Allie and I are just going to watch a movie or something, order in. We had a lot of Halloween stuff this weekend, and it was a busy weekend, and so taking it easy tonight.
I know it is hard when the Halloween falls on the Tuesday too. I noticed on Friday and Saturday, there was a lot of Halloween festivities going on, but it is April's first Halloween. She was going to be Tinkerbell, which meant I had to be Peter Pan. Maybe if we can get up to 100 likes, I'll show you my tights. Otherwise, those are going to stay behind the wall and beyond the desk for now. Andy, speaking of maxing Underdog, you've been crushing it. You told me that you'd had a few top finishes, and then I saw T-Box shouting you out on Twitter earlier today as well. Did you have another win last night?
I didn't have a win. I got a second, and I got a seventh. But I had a good night last night. But yeah, it's been a really good start. My first 2 or so nights were tough. But since then, friend of the show, John Boy Beats, has been keeping track of in the main contests, people finishing top 20, top 1%. And right now as of last night, am tied with T-Box for the second most top 20 finishes so far this season. And so it's been I haven't had any first place takedowns yet. So it hasn't been any crazy, $10,000 nights or anything, but just nice, consistent, double the bankroll kind of a contest. So it's been fun.
Keep the bot going kind of vibes.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and I mean, as everyone who plays tournaments know, it's all about the shots on goal. And if you're getting top 10s, it means you are very much building the lineups that you need, because there's so much variance in finishing first versus second. Have you been maxing out all the big contests?
Yeah, I've actually been going for a pretty aggressive strategy right now where since we're so early and so projections aren't going to be quite as good as they will be later in the season and stuff, because we just kind of, some players are just having an off couple of weeks. Some players aren't as good as they were last year. Some players are way better than they were last year. I've been maxing pretty early. So most days, if for the main contest, when it goes up the night before, I'm probably doing 50 or so drafts the night before. And then my next 100 probably before noon Eastern time most days. And I'm probably 100 drafts before 8 a.m. Eastern time most of the time. So I've been going with a pretty aggressive strategy, kind of that if you can get in with projections that you feel okay about before ETR comes out, before Stochastic comes out, and all these different sites that other people use, I think it's a bit of an edge right now just because there isn't as much information.
For sure. Yeah, I've been trying to build out my process early and earlier for NFL right now too, because these contests get up early. And I do think that's definitely a way to gain an edge. And also for people who are wondering, they might be like, is Andy sitting here manually doing all of these drafts? You are uploading your ranks and then sometimes refreshing those ranks, but you're letting autopilot do those drafts?
Yeah, I almost never influence them. Every once in a while, like kind of. So what I'll typically do is I'll do it in like 25 round batches. So I'll do like 6 of those basically, and I'll upload rankings. I'll go through it, and then I'll check my exposures and then kind of adjust accordingly. You know, that way if I go through the first 25 and I've got 100% of one player, I'm like, okay, so something's going on here. Let's figure it out. And what I'll do is I'll typically like kind of just on the side, you know, just watch, you know, I'll have like the 25 active drafts going. I'll just kind of click in and be like, all right, is anything weird happening? Am I getting a ton of the same player? And if I notice like, you know, I already have 2 players on one team or something, I'll go in and maybe adjust my like queue for that draft to not get a 3rd player from that team or something along those lines, just because it starts to get towards like negative correlation. But otherwise, I'll almost never change stuff. The only other time I will sometimes is if there's like a night like last night, there was like a ton of games, and so different people had pretty strong opinions on like the top, say like 15 or so players, and so like the ADP of the top 15 players compared to like what ETR or some of these other sites had out for rankings were like pretty different. More so than like a night like tonight where there just aren't as many good players playing. And so in those instances, if I have like my first overall pick, if he slides and I get him at like 4 or something, sometimes there I'll just take the next best ADP player with my next pick because I think it's a better variance move.
Yeah.
So like I had an example last night where I had a couple guys who were ADP like 12 or 13 above the guys who were like 7 or 8. Yeah. And in the case where I got like Jokic or Luka to slip really far, I would take one of those guys instead, just because it's a much harder combination to grab.
Yeah, what you just described was going to be like my follow-up question, because there's really not correlation stuff you're having to worry about, but that would be the one thing where you're like, holy cow, this combo is so rare. Maybe I want this sprinkled in to my portfolio, because you even see it like in the NFL. I was reviewing the team that won the Battle Royale, and they had Tyreek Hill and AJ Brown, which was a pretty rare combo to get. I think a couple other people said they had gotten it. But still, like once you get that combo, you wouldn't want to pass up on that, even if you're like, hey, I don't like, AJ Brown in this spot, which would have been a crazy take. But my point is like you would want to mix that into your portfolio.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think like that's another big thing is I just like really aggressively adjust my rankings based on ADP as well.
Yeah.
It depends on the slate and stuff, but like the kind of baseline of what I'll do is essentially whatever my rankings, like if I do, because there's no positions in basketball, so it makes it a little bit easier. You can just kind of draft based on projected points. I'll just like straight up subtract everyone's ADP from their projected points, kind of as like a baseline. And so if you're going 20th and I'm projecting you for 40 points, I'm going to project you for 20 points. And so like the guys who I'm taking at the end of a draft, I like on my sheet are projected for like negative 15 points or, like 0 fantasy points. But I really aggressively don't want to be the guy who's drafting ADP 20 players at like pick number 8 or something. I think that there's very little value there versus I think in NFL, you can like make a better case for it sometimes because there's just so much more randomness where, you can, a lot of times you can get there with a bunch of guys who all were 6th round picks because they all got 2 touchdowns. But that's way rarer in the NBA. It actually kind of happened last night. Last night was a weird night. There were a ton of swaps and like all of the swaps hit, like all the top guys who got injury swapped in hit for like 40 to 60 points. And so it was a weird night.
Yeah. Clay, have you gotten in the Underdog NBA streets? Are you still getting settled at your new place here?
Yeah, mostly getting settled. I've been firing a little bit on redacted NBA because it's just my bad habit. I can't quit. But yeah, I'm looking forward to getting more in the Underdog NBA streets tonight. I was thinking about waiting in tonight, but 3-game slates are a little tough, I think. And there's a good conversation going on with Badge Bros earlier. If you're not maxing like myself, I think it's a little more challenging. Obviously, every slate is unique, and if you have a good read or you feel like ADP is off, which I think there is some like unique and some interesting ADP where it's kind of like netted out on this slate in particular, like Mobley's going really, really high, which I think is kind of interesting. I think there's some other players that I would maybe take ahead of him. Like I might fire off one just to have a little sweat tonight. But we'll see. I'm looking forward to getting more into it as the season progresses, but I just haven't had quite the time in the last week with the move and everything to go off like I'd like to.
Yeah, I think that's something good there that Clay touched on. I think just like with NBA, with like the big contests, it is a real big advantage to be max entering. At least I feel that it is. And so I definitely think that's something to like take into consideration if you're just like firing off one or two or whatever, is like I would probably do it for fun, not for profit. Yeah. But I will say that lately, shout out to Numi and Hope, who have been doing the new draft stuff. They've been doing a $3.20 max entry, which I think is a really good one if you're interested in kind of getting your feet wet, but don't want to put up the $750 to max the main. It's $60 to max it. You kind of can get the experience of, if you want to manually draft, you can open up 3 tabs at once and do it all. But that's what I've been recommending to friends who I've been like talking to about it, who are interested but don't want to, either don't want to or don't have the bankroll to go all in.
Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. And then also for the people who might want to go down the sicko path, you still have, because someone was asking for it. I think it was Rinpack was asking for that Chrome extension that you had whipped up for auto regging and mass, so you're not having to manually click. That's still pinned in the Discord, right? In the Badge Bros?
Yeah, so if you hop into the Badge Bros chat in the Discord and go to the Hoops channel, it's pinned in there. And basically, there's some instructions in there. I'm actually working on an upgraded version where it should hopefully be a little bit easier to use. But essentially what it does is you just kind of say how many drafts you want to enter and what the name of the contest is. And then it will auto enter you and turn you on auto draft for all of them. So that way you don't have to be like RT99.
Speaking of Numi and the Badge Bros, you see the new contest that went live on Underdog about, 30, 45 minutes ago?
The Badge Bros Brawl?
Yeah.
Oh, no, I didn't see this.
Pretty interesting little contest.
Little $5 entry 3-person drafts 10K prize pool. That looks fun.
Yeah. Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, the NBA slate this week is tough. Or the NFL, I should say. I did a couple this morning.
Yeah.
Hey,
I saw someone say
there's a couple of spots that I kind of like too. So I'm going to try to jump in a couple drafts earlier this week while people are still feeling it's so gross, and try to, convince myself I have a little bit of a read on a couple of spots that I like that I don't think people are giving quite enough attention to yet.
It's a funny one because the primetime game one feels like it's deeper than the regular one.
Yeah, that's wild.
True. Yeah, it's a brutal slate. There's only one total over 45 on the main slate, multiple sub 40. We have like 8 backup quarterbacks playing.
So what happens when we ship off the best game to Germany?
I know, seriously.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny too, because normally we're like, oh man, these poor, people across the pond never get to watch a good game. And then I'm like, shit, why did we give them Chiefs Dolphins? We should have kept that.
I know.
Yeah. Travis, I'll definitely, I can definitely oblige you here. Normally it's just my tank top doing it, but there's something about having the sleeves that I think makes it even more provocative.
This could be really old club vibes with your chest out, Pete. Like this is like, we're talking bull market run. No wonder we said club is up to go. The tights are out, baby.
Does that answer?
We said
your
October
question,
and Pete's like bring out the chest hair like old times.
Yeah. Andy, one thing I wanted to ask you about, because I don't think we've talked about it on the show. Do you want to talk a little bit about IKB? I don't know much about it at this point.
Yeah, definitely. I've been waiting until we're closer to being ready, but we're actually kind of getting there now. I'm working on something new with my old co-founder from the fractional Tessera days. And essentially it's just going to be, I love the Zach Ertz photo too. We just found
such an old photo.
We've gotten so many DMs that are like, why did you choose that photo? And I was just like, it looked good. And it was like the color that we wanted. That was basically it. But yeah, we're going to be doing a DFS platform kind of on crypto rails. We have some fun ideas for things eventually to kind of leverage crypto more so at the start. In a lot of ways, it'll just be, entering with crypto. It'll be like non-custodial, which I think is kind of fun. No more having to like deposit or withdraw. You just, if you have USDC in your wallet, you can enter contests, and when you get paid out, you get paid out with USDC, which I think is like pretty nice. But yeah, we're getting pretty close to having the site into a place where we will be doing like some paper games with like friends and family. And so I definitely recommend signing up if you are interested in kind of being a alpha tester and checking things out. But yeah, I'm pretty excited. It'll be hopefully something that you can like actively play sometime during this NFL season. I'd be pretty shocked if it wasn't. Kind of
That's
sorting out all of our like data providers and all of that kind of stuff right now. But I'm excited. It feels like a good overlap of my interests at this point. So
yeah. And where on the DFS spectrum are the contests gonna fall?
Yeah, so we're gonna start with pick'em stuff because I mean, to be honest, it's just the easiest thing to make. It's you don't have to be building like lobbies or entries and all these different things. And then we'll see. Our current thoughts is to kind of go more of the less of like the drafting way that Underdog is going, and more so kind of going more directly for the FanDuel DraftKings world. And I think that there's a lot of space to innovate on the like salaried daily fantasy sports games, and there hasn't been like a really legitimate project that's tried to in a while, I think. And like a lot of the new really strong daily fantasy sports apps have been Underdog doing best ball drafts, pick'ems, or prize picks, or all these different things. And so want to try to see if we can try to steal some market share from DraftKings and FanDuel while they spend all their time focusing on sports books and casinos.
So when you say that, you mean more salary cap games?
Yeah. I think that'll be our focus once we start going on from like just pick'ems to like full PvP contests.
Are you guys going to have guaranteed prize pools?
Eventually. I mean, that'll be something that we'll have to scale up over time. But I do think that's one thing that like I think crypto will be pretty helpful with is I think it won't be like quite as daunting to like deposit a bunch of money into an unknown thing versus like you can actually just like check the chain and see where your USDC is going and all these different things. And so hopefully we can scale it up faster than we would if we were just like asking you to use your credit card. But yeah, we definitely plan to have GPPs and all of that once we get into the salary cap games.
Nice, dude. That's exciting stuff. I'm sure we'll feel free to always let us know if you got an update to pass along on the club on Tuesdays.
Yeah, definitely. I'm excited about it. I think we have some interesting things we're going to experiment with. One thing that we're pretty excited about is we want it to be like way more social than any of the other DFS platforms are. You're going to like out of the gate be able to like follow people's accounts if you want to. And we'll have like active feeds where you can, make your pick'ems public if you want to and different things like that. And as we like kind of scale up that side of things, I think that there's like a lot of interesting stuff to explore where like people like yourself or people who are like touts that are selling rankings or all these different things can potentially monetize their content like directly inside of what we're doing, where you can, if you're following someone, maybe you can subscribe and get access to the same pick'ems that they're doing with like an hour lag time of like line movement, or, they can share private pick'ems or share rankings in the app and like kind of try to make that stuff a lot more native to what we're doing, as opposed to having to go find some random third-party site or go in a like paid Discord or something like that.
Yeah, that's cool. It definitely seems like there would be some cool use cases for, say if a draft or a high volume decided, I will make my exposures like public or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but as a return, like anyone who opts into that, like I don't know, maybe they get like a very small cut of any winnings of anyone who opt into like seeing that. Like that could be a funny or a fun mechanism.
Yeah, I think there's a ton of stuff that you can explore there. And I think like in general, like the daily fantasy sports community it's such a social game. And it's like just kind of crazy to me that none of these apps at like their core are social in any way. And so I think that there's a lot of stuff to do there, whether it's for, more for fun or for, subscribing to the people who you think are really, really strong players and, maybe getting an edge by them giving you some access to their information that you otherwise wouldn't have.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's, I mean, I know some of the like literal social aspects, like everyone always asks for on Underdog, having like a chat box, but poker has seen that come and go and it just gets so toxic. But the element of, even thinking about Underdog, like how cool would it be if there was a tab that had like their whatever, in the same way like Roto Grinders has their top DFS rankings. If there was a tab that showed the top Underdog players and you could filter it by week, by month, by year, stuff like that, social stuff is still really untapped. And you see how crazy people go for the badges or just even getting the horns or whatever. It's like, that's such low hanging fruit and people really, really like that stuff.
We will have full blown leaderboards for the entire site at launch. That's like one thing we said, we were like, whatever we do, there will be like total leaderboards for everything. And you can go and see who the best players are, go to their profile, follow them on social media. You'll be able to like link all your socials and everything. And so I think that'll be something that'll be really fun and like a good way for people to flex and kind of, like you were saying, not social in the form of like I get to DM with people one-on-one in
right
in our drafts and bully them into not taking my guy, but other fun things.
I just have conversations with myself and the drafters when I see someone. It was actually early last week. D's just like sniped me brutally in a dog bowl draft. And now thinking back to it, I just remembered it. I had a CD Lamb and he took an unstacked Dak, which again, in that format where you're getting the money back and the promo, I completely get it. It's fully justified. But I was like, God damn it, D's. But I just have that dialogue with myself in my head. I don't even need to type it anywhere.
I did that the other day. I was doing, I think it was a dog bowl. It might have just been a battle royale this past week. Yeah. And every once in a while, it was like the guy next to me was picking at the turn, I want to say. And he had CD and Tony Pollard, and I didn't have a quarterback yet. And I like didn't have any prospects to stack one. And I was like, I'm just going to be an asshole. And I took Dak just so he didn't get the stack. Yeah. And then like, I've been on the other side of it too many times. You have to take the chance when you get it.
I feel like a good middle ground would just be like you could like thumbs up or thumbs down or like emoji like a pick in some response because then it like keeps like some of the really toxic elements that you don't have to deal with moderating and that bullshit away. But then it has a kind of fun thing of like,
put up a shit emoji.
Middle finger is like not the worst thing in the world, like,
well, that was like the get playback. We talked about that with Skis last week, right? Where you get the freezing cold emoji, and it would tilt me so much. Like you're trying to fire off a take, and you're just getting pummeled with these ice emojis. It tilts you. It's perfect.
Or you're just like you have like your player selection. I mean, that would be honestly like really funny. Is like you just ice the shit out of like every single person that's you're drafting against. You're like shitty pick.
Was hoping we would get some kind of fun NFL trade today. Doesn't seem like that's going to happen. We did get Donovan Peoples-Jones to the Lions. Josh Dobbs obviously going to the Vikings. There was the rumors earlier today that people were interested in Zeke Elliott, but then it says the Patriots, Albert Breer reported that they actually never got any calls about Zeke Elliott, which
I said Bill Simmons had a funny tweet speaking about Patriots. It was like something about Mac Jones potentially being someone people would trade for, but that they did like there wasn't that much interest. And he was like, yes, my hunch is that maybe they looked at some tape and then they like decided it wasn't worth it.
Yeah. Some fun defensive trades for sure, but nothing that's like moving the needle for fantasy. The one I was hoping a Denver wide receiver got moved. Put like Jerry Jeudy or Sutton in a new spot, maybe fucking clear the runway for Marvin Mims a bit. Like that could have been fun. And I also was hoping that the Ravens traded for a running back. I thought them like maybe getting in the Henry or even if they got Zeke or something could have been a little bit interesting.
I wonder if Gus Edwards having that big of a game this past week, like
he's looked good. He's looked good.
Yeah.
I mean, they could have got like Fournette as like an insurance policy and had like another trotter in case like something happened to Gus and whatnot. But I was really pulling for Jameis to go to the Vikings. That was one where I was going to rush to every single fantasy league I am in. And if I was weak at quarterback position, like scoop him, because Jameis to Addison just feels like I would be like I'm playing that DFS in some lineup like almost every week.
Yeah.
I do like Dobbs. I think that he, as someone who has Hawkinson in all of my managed leagues, which is not very many, but has him, like I feel okay about having him be their quarterback. I think that'll be interesting, and it's fun to know that means that Kyler's coming back. Like,
yeah, I think the Dobbs stuff, you know, he was really supporting the tight end in Arizona. I do think Jordan Addison probably is a good proxy for like Marquise Brown, where you're going to get like some decent games, but then the floor will be below. And then the other thing that's, I guess, different about Dobbs is he'll take off and run the ball a little bit. So that probably takes a few pass attempts away from the offense, but at least the offense isn't cratering, you know, like we'll get to see what it's going to look like this week with Jaron Hall, a guy I literally had never heard of until 2 days ago.
Scary.
So that could get,
and I think like, also, it's not like Dobbs, like, you know, he was on the Titans and like they didn't have a whole lot going on, and he was on this Cardinals team. Like, this will be the team with the most offensive weapons that he's been like put into, and so there's a chance I think that he also is a little bit better than people think he is. Not that he's gonna like, you know, lead them to a Super Bowl or anything, but I kind of like him as a player.
Yeah, and I just saw Jordan Schultz tweet confirming that the Broncos aren't expected to trade Judy or Sutton. Sounds like they got some offers, but nothing that was enticing enough for them to move. That was the other thing. I was like, you know, in the same vein of the Gus Edwards, I was like, Judy actually had a pretty good game on Sunday. Would that have helped? It is funny to think like how much do even NFL evaluators and GMs fall prey to recency bias? Because if you were trying to shop Gus Edwards in a fantasy league, like last week's game is beautiful for you because your league mates are going to fall prey to those psychological biases. But do NFL GMs, are they also like, man, Gus Edwards sure looked good on Sunday. Can't let him go now.
I kind of think probably.
Yeah.
They're just people like us, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like it's probably even worse with GMs, man. I feel like you see these owners that just like have these like takes they get stuck to and they don't move from them. I feel like, you know, they're not pulling up the all 22. They probably saw some highlights on whatever Monday Night Football segment with Chris Berman at halftime and we're like, oh, falling in love over some of these players out here.
Yeah. The trade deadline is in 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
2 minutes. So unless something, I guess sometimes the way it's like filed to the league office, there can be a little bit of a delay, but if we don't get anything in like the next 10 or 15 minutes, it's probably the end of it here. We got the Badge Bros showing up in the chat here. They're wondering if this is a time you're not actually drafting hoops. Are you done, Andy, or have you moved on to other contests?
Yeah, there's no contest that I can enter right now on Underdog for hoops, and there hasn't been for about 4 hours. And so I'm just waiting on
right there.
Yeah, well, I was talking to Crutches about it on Telegram earlier, and I was like, I do this so that way I can actually focus on work, because otherwise,
it's actually a work hack for you to max.
Yeah, it's a life hack. Is just max enter as fast as possible. But I have to stop doing it though because there's too many Q tags in NBA, where like I think there's some real value in like knowing how to manage those. Where like today, Karis LeVert got downgraded to questionable after I'd already finished maxing, and so like I wasn't getting him at his ADP, but now that he's been downgraded to questionable, I probably would have been. And so like, I wish I had 50 more bullets to fire off and have a little more exposure to him.
That's generally kind of a bad sign in NBA historically, is like a midday or same day downgrade to questionable.
Yeah.
Is usually not like a good sign that they're going to suit up that night.
No, no, it's not.
Yeah.
And so if you have, and this goes back to kind of the late swap issue, right? Where say it was a guy you had a huge stand on, like 25, 30%. In a perfect world, your confidence in that player wouldn't be reflected in your confidence of a 1-for-1 late swap, where ideally you'd probably have like a basket of guys mixing in for him and smooth out the replacements. But the way the swaps work, you'd have to have one single guy replacing him.
Yeah, I would say it's not ideal. I think probably my biggest ask of Underdog, like the thing that I would love more than anything would be to be able to, for each draft, manually set my queue, or even just like if it carried on the queue that I had when the draft ended. I think that would be like so massive. for stuff like this, because it can be tough. Like tonight, my two of my three highest exposure players are questionable, and so it's like they're last round picks, and so it is what it is. But if they don't play, I'm going to end up with very high exposure to guys who I otherwise wasn't going to be taking.
Yeah.
Andy, will you share some of your exposures at this point in time, or since you've maxed?
Yeah, I've actually already shared my full exposure for the day
cool.
with the Badge Bros Discord. And for anyone who's interested in playing NBA and trying to take it at least somewhat seriously, not that it's a very serious chat. There's a lot of random bullshit that we talk about in there. But I will say that it's a really great chat. Like people are super, super helpful. If you come in and have questions about things or how people go about doing stuff, there's a ton of really smart people in there who are happy to help. People are sharing spreadsheets and data and all of that. It's a really nice community of people, and just a fun place to hang out. But let's see. So tonight, and my highest exposure is Zubac on the Clippers. And then tied with that is actually three more players, which is right after him, which is Wendell Carter Jr., Norm Powell, and Devin Vassell. They're all in the low 30s of exposure, so about 2x the field.
Yep.
I went pretty hard on some of the Spurs guys. I have Zach Collins a lot. I actually ended up with a lot of Wembanyama, this is my first time I've ever been over the field on Wemby. I didn't want to be. I don't really know what happened, but that's what happens when you auto draft. Is you set your rankings and then you look and you go, oh, this isn't what I was hoping for. But
that is such a bizarre kind of thing. You think about how most people are last week on Underdog NFL, I'm clicking Tony Pollard and Jonathan Taylor a ton. It's I have a very clean rooting interest, and I'm intentionally going to be rooting for these guys. And you're well, I guess I'm rooting for Wemby tonight, even though I have no intention of doing so. Clay, speaking of NBA stuff, any thoughts on that Harden trade yesterday? Does that move the needle for you at all?
I mean, yes and no. It's hard to say. I'm just skeptical that this team, if they make it to the playoffs and they're all healthy, they're in an incredible position if they can figure out how to play together. But I know, I was listening to a little bit of No Dunks this morning and with Skeets and Trey, and they were just talking about this is a great team if it's 6 years ago. And at this point in time, it's just a lot stacked against them to really see them as viable. I think the benefit though is it does give the opportunity for them to probably finesse the new load management rules and how they can rotate players to get more rest in a way that stays above board with NBA policy, and still be have a pretty solid regular season. So in that sense, it does. I don't know. I'm a big Tyrese Maxey fan, so I think it's just pretty cool that the Sixers went kind of all in with him. And I don't know. The Clippers still have enough bench pieces, especially since people are expecting Westbrook to come off the bench again. So I think it comes down to really how does he do this bench role, because it did not go so well with the Lakers. And can the other pieces make that second unit strong enough to handle other teams when those stars are off the court? But they definitely got better. It's hard to say they didn't. They just acquired and Harden was putting up 40 balls in the playoffs last year, and is honestly a big reason Embiid got the MVP in some respects. I didn't even realize this, and that he led the league in assists last year, which is insane. So I think it's a win-win. I think it's just the Sixers needed to get him to a different location. It's the NBA, so he can force his way out. It's a really funny commentary about the difference between the NFL and NBA, and Devontae just not having the same kind of juice to be able to force his way out. And he's obviously not going about it the same way that Harden is, with the signs in the strip club saying Daryl Morey's a liar and shit like that. He's not out there, the Vegas clubs just I don't know, whacking around with signs and whatnot. But I don't know. We'll see. I'm skeptical. I don't know how much it really improves their title odd chances, except on paper. But we'll check in the spring and see how we're looking.
Andy, any Harden takes for you?
I generally agree with Clay. I think that theoretically the Clippers got better. I think it gives them, probably the most valuable thing, as Clay was saying, around just rest, is now if Kawhi needs to sit for 15 games or something like that, they just have a guy who, Harden, all things considered, when he wants to be, is a guy who can play a lot of minutes and plays pretty consistently and help teams win in the regular season. Whether or not he can help you win in the postseason is more so up for debate, but I think that's what Kawhi is for. And so I don't know, like I don't think they're going to win the title, but I think like they could, because I think at the end of the day, that team kind of just comes down to like, is Kawhi going to be healthy? And, the Kawhi Leonard who we've seen at like his absolute peak in the playoffs. And, there's some small chance he is. And if he is, the supporting cast around him isn't quite as important. And I think Harden, like as a third player on a team trying to make the finals with Kawhi, like it's a pretty solid third player. But I don't think that like he in and of himself really moves the needle that much for the team. It's more so just like giving them more flexibility during the regular season to make sure that they get into the playoffs with a healthy Kawhi. Because if Kawhi's not healthy, then I don't think it matters like at all.
It's almost like one of those like best ball moves, right? Where you're just like, I just need this team to sneak in to, week 15, 16, 17. And if it does, it's a little dangerous. Like that's kind of how I feel about the Clippers team now. It's like they basically are like although I wouldn't say that their chances of like making the postseason have decreased by any chance because they made another move. It's just like they're a little more fragile if injuries happen, but they're also have some more strength around being able to handle the injuries as well. So
what you're saying is Harden is the week 17 is all that matters trade.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Except for he doesn't perform in the playoffs historically. So it's, who knows what to make of it. But yeah, hypothetically speaking.
That's funny. But he'll like still like once he's up and running, I mean, he'll still be like in a regular underdog draft slate, like he'll be a top pick, right? Like on a nightly basis, he'll still have that ceiling.
Probably. I think like, so the Clippers are weird in general. Any team where you have just like multiple guys who on any given night could be that guy are weird. Like Kawhi Leonard and Paul George are just always really weird on underdog. Even without having James Harden. And so
always late second round.
Yeah. They're always like second round picks because they're not going to be, you don't know for sure that they're the alpha of that team in the same way that like Luka is with the Mavs or Jokic is with the Nuggets.
Like so it's just like or something like somebody who's less profile, but like has the usage and like is the number one player on that team, like undoubtedly.
Yeah. And so I think it'll kind of depend like how things shake out. I could see him kind of depending on how the roles shake out, being like a consistent second or third round pick. But 3 players is like a lot as far as like, and it depends on the size of the slate as well. But on like an 11-person slate or something, probably the most comparable set of like a big 3-ish that you would see is like the Bulls players who obviously aren't as good, but it doesn't really matter that much for this. It's all about how many points can you score, or like the Cavs players. And typically you'll see like one go in the first round, one in the second round, one in the third or fourth round, or further back, depending on how many guys are healthy and playing. So kind of depends, but I think there will definitely still be nights where it's like you need Harden on your team to win. Like that feels pretty inevitable.
Especially if he's going to be sliding into like a later round, because like if you think about the ADP just kind of collectively going down for all 4 players, I think what makes it really interesting is like once we see where like Westbrook's role nets out, and if he starts going really late in drafts, but then has better usage perhaps because he's leading the second unit and is still getting around, I don't know, 26 to 30-ish minutes a game in some respects, like in closing, who knows what their closing line is going to look up. That's a whole different dynamic in NBA than like, NFL or other sports and how the starting lineups play. That'll be fascinating because if you start getting a player like that in the late rounds and he's performing better than he has recently, like there's going to be some fun game theory elements to this for sure. So yeah, who knows? That's a fun part about drafting, especially in NBA, is there's a lot of dynamics. And I think in some respects more so than NFL, even though that kind of gets equaled out between like player positions and non-player positions across the 2 sports.
Speaking of drafting, you guys want to wrap up with a few drafts?
Yeah, let's do it.
How about I know nothing, but Andy's maxed. Maybe we do one NBA draft here and get some of Andy's takes.
I'm down.
Yeah,
do a tip off.
Yeah.
Oh shit. Let me try to hop in. Where'd it go?
Oh, if you're heavy on Wembanyama, and he's already a top 6 pick on this slate.
Yeah, and so I had him.
I did not get in.
I had him behind Julius Randle actually. It just like kind of happened, I think he's a guy where he's been sliding a little bit. I think there's a lot of people who like don't totally trust him for good reason, but I do think his ceiling is there. And so would I choose to be 1.5 times the field on Wembanyama? Probably not.
Yeah.
But I can convince
this
myself
slate's
the narrative
not
where it
terrible.
works. Yeah.
Is that also weighted to just I'm guessing you were overweight late draft slots in your 150?
Yeah, I think I didn't get a ton of 2 and 3. I got a little bit more 1. I have like almost 20% Kevin Durant, who he's like the stone cold 1-1 in this draft.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think I had a little bit of bad luck with my bad luck. Who knows? That was kind of how things shook out.
I think this 2 pick is pretty tricky.
I was just going to say this Mitchell Q tag here. Is there an obvious 2?
He's who I took all day. I had Durant and Mitchell 1-2 all day. He is questionable. He missed their last game, but he was present at shoot around today.
Yeah.
And it was a sore hamstring, not like he pulled his hamstring. So I think it was relatively precautionary.
Garland's already ruled out. He's a New York guy playing the Knicks tonight. It's kind of a fun narrative always with him. It's definitely a tier for me. It's like KD, tier of his own. Mitchell, if he plays and is healthy, tier of his own. I don't really get Mobley 3, to be honest. Like, I mean, he is a stat stuffer, but I'm like, I pulled this up and almost spit out my water when I saw Mobley 3rd overall ADP. So I can't quite wrap my head around that one.
I don't think he's a very good pick at 3. I don't think he's a very good pick at like 6. So
I don't either, which is why I kind of want to fire off a couple bullets tonight, because I'm like, well, shit, like if he's going 3 overall, he's been pretty consistently there for the whole slate.
Yeah. Paul George is probably who I would have actually at 3. Him and Kawhi Leonard, that's pretty interchangeable. I feel like who really knows, but because of the James Harden trade, they only have like 8 active players on their roster or 9 active players on their roster.
Yeah.
And so I think that those guys are just going to kind of have to play a lot of minutes.
Yeah. I think if you got like, PG and Kawhi, that's actually a nice pairing on this slate than normal because of, this is a typical, daily fantasy NBA thing where you target the teams that are going to run a tight rotation, especially if other players are out, condensed usage. And then you try to find the spots where you're not picking the guy that just gets a lot of minutes, but is not going to, touch the ball, shoot the ball, or get, any PRA. So that seems kind of fun to me.
Yeah.
I think Brunson's a little undervalued relative to this slate. He stands out to me. Struce Curry has been, I can't remember the last few games, but I played him the first night of the season and he fucking balled out. He put up like 50.
He's been playing a ton of minutes. He's someone who I think I drafted him 2 times in 150 lineups tonight. So I was not on Max Struce, but that's a big part of that too, is I try really hard to not like scoreboard watch.
Yeah.
And so, like, this is an example of that. Like, I would take Paolo. He has really not done very much this year. He has, like, been someone who has had a pretty tough couple first games. But based on his skill profile and how he played last year and stuff, I think he's still the right pick. And you just kind of are betting that he's due to regress back to kind of his average.
Yeah, I don't love the Clippers matchup, but it's like he's the number 1 option on that team. Then you look at the next few picks and you have LeVert, who's like injured, not the number 1 option. RJ, not the number 1 option. Not that he's the 3rd option. You got, Struce, which you basically are like he's a poor man's Klay Thompson. So you really need him to go off from 3.
It does look like if I'm doing the team splits, it was the game against Brooklyn last time when he went off there.
Yeah. They're at home.
Oh no, they play Cleveland tonight. I was mixing up my Brooklyn and
no, you're good.
Mixing up your New York teams.
My New York, my Jets, Giants, they're just So who do you roll with here?
So I think that it's relatively open. I am really high on Zach Collins tonight. Collins. If my auto draft was running, it would be Zach Collins. I think a lot of people probably disagree and would take LeVert. But
I want the Andy auto draft experience.
I like Collins there. Phoenix doesn't really scare you down low. Like Nurkic is not the defensive presence.
I do like Nurkic tonight a lot too.
Yeah, well, I mean, because also like Zach Collins is not like, I mean, he gets some block shots, but he's not really stopping.
Not going to be a lot of defense played in the paint tonight.
No, certainly not. It's definitely an interesting game to think about. I just the Cleveland injury situation is just obviously what actually makes this slate kind of really wide open and fun, because who knows? I mean, like Mitchell could still get ruled out. Like LeVert is also questionable. Like if anything changed on that front, your turn Pete flips the whole slate on his head. So
yeah, that's the thing with like a Max Strus is you're getting some potential upside that's not baked into his projections of just like Karis LeVert doesn't play.
Who's the biggest beneficiary or beneficiaries if LeVert doesn't play from a usage standpoint?
Probably. I mean, if Donovan Mitchell plays, his usage is just going to be really high, kind of in general. But it would probably be, Strus. Probably would be, what's his name? I don't even know. Like probably like Isaac Okoro or like Dean Wade or something. Like,
gross.
I don't think that anyone on their team is gonna like becomes a total smash if LeVert doesn't play. I think it's probably like you take Okoro a little bit higher than you would have. Like Okoro probably his ADP would jump up to like that 22 range or so, above a lot of these guys who he's going behind right now. If you were to find out that LeVert was out.
Yeah, I was just trying to think of ways of like, we have Mitchell, we passed on LeVert. Like, what are ways to further kind of leverage and play the scenarios where LeVert's out?
Yeah, I think you probably have a pretty nice opportunity to do that here. If you wanted to, you could like, I bet you he'll slide back to the
Push
next.
him. Yeah.
Oh, good one. You don't have any Suns either. Fucking star of the early season. He fucking shoots the ball. Like he I don't know. I mean, that's where I would go. Andy, what
I like him here. He's T-Box's pick. T-Box has been tweeting out his picks. And he's his 3-4 turn pick of the day. He does his first overall pick, his 3-4 turn pick of the day, and his last pick. So
I don't know why that's making me laugh so far. A 3-4 pick of the day.
Yeah, it's incredible. And he just gives one too. It's not like both, right? It's just like the 1-3-4 turn player.
I want like all this like media production around it. Like I want him to get like really expensive graphics made for who's his 3-4 turn pick of the day.
I've been loving his content on Twitter or X. For anyone who doesn't follow T-Box, he's the shit. I've really enjoyed his stuff.
We did get sniped on my Okoro thought, but that's all right.
I mean, that's fine. I would take Markelle Fultz. I have him up pretty high. I'm pretty high on all the Orlando guys today. I don't really know why. It's just the way the numbers came out, and I'm a bit of a slave to the projections.
Yeah, I like Fultz there.
So we got Donovan Mitchell, Paolo, Zach Collins, Jordan Goodwin, and Fultz now.
Yeah, and so in a perfect world here, my like ideal ending to this draft would be one of Zubac or Norm Powell, is based on who will probably actually still be there. I like both of those guys, and I just like like I was saying, since there's so few players on the Clippers right now, they just like someone has to play minutes.
I meant to ask how much, just with like the ADPs being fairly correlated, no other kind of like correlation considerations, like how many dupes do you get in these contests?
So on the smaller slates, it happens more often. A couple. Every once in a while. There was the other night I duped myself for 8th place. I just double finished in 8th. But it doesn't happen too often. Something like this, you'll probably see a decent amount, but yeah, it like happens surprisingly less than you would think. Even for like me, just like auto drafting and not thinking about it, I'll definitely get dupes. Yeah. But I think part of it too is changing the ranks up a little bit every 25. I think that does help. And also just like people do weird stuff.
Yeah. I feel like it's actually like pretty impressive, like how infrequent I've seen it. maybe I'm also not in the streets as hard as you every night, Andy, but that's kind of my take too. It's not as frequent as you would expect on the surface.
No, I think that's right.
Yeah, it's just hard to scroll down and get weird.
If someone ends up out, are you just shit out of luck? No. You get that's what we were talking about with the late swap. So you can go into your ranks and set them. If you don't set your ranks, they will put the player with the highest ADP who wasn't drafted in your lineup for you. But you can manually select it if you have a guy you're higher on. Did you say Eubanks or was it someone else?
This is a tough spot here. Let's see.
I think I go Plumlee because of the Clippers, just like low down, or you could say Bone. I mean, I would go Clippers.
Yeah,
here.
I think Plumlee or Bones. I'd probably go Bones, but not by a ton.
I like Bones a little bit better. I mean, I'm not a Plumlee guy, but
okay,
Bones is fun.
Yeah,
I also like it too because you don't have like a Paul George or a Kawhi on this team. So actually, like I kind of like this a lot. Let's say like Orlando's coming off a back-to-back, not always the best situation to target. Clippers are definitely a more talented team, even being shorthanded. If there's a blowout scenario, I imagine Bones gets a little bit more run. But I think it's also just like nice leverage on the fact that you don't have other Clippers on this team too. And he's a guy that can put up some points.
All right. If I ship this, guys, I'm going to start giving out my 5-6 turn pick of the day on Twitter, but only if I win.
Pete down for a BR? Or...
Yeah, let's do a BR.
Yeah, let's fuck it.
I need to do I've been slacking. I'll watch this one. There we go. Other people fill this. I feel like it's too negative EV to have a 6-person draft where like half the people in the lobby, and that they're going to do it smart.
Yeah, although I feel that way about the dog bowls. Like the 12-person drafts can get really brutal. The battle royales, it's like, I don't know. There's so much more strategy with getting more unique and scrolling down.
True.
There you go. The real question is Kamara, should Kamara be the 101?
Yeah,
I was thinking about that earlier. If someone gave you, what would the odds have to have been to take the bet that at some point during this season, Kamara will be the 1-1 pick on Underdog?
I would have assumed it would have involved like an act of God and all the games except the Saints one got canceled.
Yeah, or Christian McCaffrey tears his ACL and the Niners trade for Kamara.
Yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, it's wild. This slate, I mean, we kind of joke about it most weeks. You're like, oh, this is a gross slate or whatever, but this is by far the worst one of the year. And you feel the depth just fall off real quick.
No, this is disgusting. Like I'm already like, oh, like this doesn't like the 101 does not feel good at all. Like I don't want to take Kamara 101. Like, and I guess I kind of have to. It's like,
and you're like, you can be like, oh man, there's some interesting names. Oh, look at this value on Puka, and then it's like, well, they're on the road at Green Bay with Brett Rippon at quarterback.
I'm gonna take Kamara because I love AGB. I just feel like I don't think 125 a game is going to work going too much farther, and the Cowboys are a tough matchup. I think CD is kind of interesting at 101 if you wanted to fade Kamara because like the Eagles do get burned in the air, and but I don't want to also like feed into like, well, he just had a career game last week, so now I want to like fly him up the board. It's just more like, well, for the guys that have that elite ceiling in the top 3 picks, like I would take AJ Brown for like talent, but like the matchup's not so good, I would downgrade him there. And then CD, I would be like, well, I don't like him as much as AJ Brown as a player, but then like his matchup is better based on just like how everyone's gassing the Eagles through the air right now. So
yeah, I think I normally would have some pause about CD there, but it is the best game environment of the week.
Yeah.
We also just saw the Eagles secondary just get lit apart by Howell.
Go
so
Eagles, baby.
I definitely get it.
I kind of feel like this is an interesting week for like quarterback. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
ETR hasn't come out with their ranks yet, but like I wouldn't be shocked if it was like if they had Hurts and Lamar as like their 1-2 players this week. Mm-hmm. Just because like you feel the drop off at quarterback just as much as anywhere else. And I feel like locking in one of those 2 QBs is like really, really valuable.
Totally.
I think that's a really good point. The gap from those guys down to the Dak and Derek Carr is massive.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, if QB2 is Lamar Jackson and QB4 is Derek Carr, like
Yeah. Yeah, I wonder too. That's a good point. It might be time to early on load up on as much Lamar. I think that's a really good point. Get as much like Lamar Andrews as you can right now before ETR puts Lamar in the top 3.
Yeah, I mean, like right now, Lamar Andrews at the 6 is at the turn is free.
I'm surprised that this G-Men passed it up.
Yeah, why are you going Thielen at 6?
So I mean, like Pete, you just gotta. I think you just take Lamar, even though you have.
Well, I'm not
Dak
up yet.
available.
If he falls,
but you get him.
He's got a quarterback. You got him. Like if you want.
Yeah, you got him.
Shit, I didn't even notice that. Beautiful.
Yeah, you got him.
Wow, Lamar at 10. That's not going to happen much this week.
No, it's certainly not.
That's one to me where I feel like there's a real edge, and this goes back to what we were talking about in the very beginning about drafting before the like consensus rankings are out. Is like, it's one of those things where people don't like taking a quarterback that early, but once you see, ETR has them at 2 overall, then it becomes way easier.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, having the confidence of that.
Where do you think Devontae Adams' ADP end of this week? There's no way he stays at 11, right?
The thing is it might be again one of those things where public sentiment pushes him down, and then like the ETR ranks are like the math is the math, and he stays up here. It's not like the Giants are a bad matchup back at home, and it's also like, I mean, the wheels might be as squeaky as they'll ever get.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And I didn't watch the game, but there were a couple passes that were like just really bad misses that he was like wide open, right? I saw the one down the sideline.
And one of the interceptions was a Devontae Adams red zone target. Like, it's not like Devontae Adams was being ignored. It's just Jimmy G played so bad.
He had like over 8 targets at least, because I know it was like the last graphic I saw during the game was like 7 targets, but like the 2 awful pass, he was wide the fuck open. Like they were walking touchdowns, and one Jimmy G threw out of bounds, and the other one he just like airmailed him. It was bad.
What do we think?
I dare you. Don't ruin your perfect team, man. That's what I'm saying. Like
I think you're probably right. Like I bet you, like consensus rankings would have him as the best available player of who's left.
You know what?
Don't ruin your team.
I'm going to mix it up a little bit here. I also I want to get Zay to stack with there, and I think I might like running back better than wide receiver on this slate. So I was thinking I might be a 2 running back build anyways, and do Zay as my other.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, running back late feels strong comparatively. Like drafting Kenneth Walker in the last round sometimes feels pretty good. Yeah. Versus like I feel like the gap between Kamara at 1 and Tony Pollard, Walker, Gus Edwards at 28 is like not that big.
No, or even Bijan, like he could spike this. You just never know. Like Kamara's not a 101. It's just relative to slate. I think
the thing is too, that's crazy about that ADP and why I think Adams. And it's not even that Adams at that price is bad. It's just him and Jacoby should be going basically back to back, and the gap between them, that's pretty wild. How far down, like their usage has been.
We have enough evidence that Jacoby's just as big a part of the offense.
But so he's just being bolstered there by name brand. If you like Adams versus the Giants, you should also love Jacoby versus the Giants. It's the same play with less meltdown on the sideline risk.
Or you should just draft a shit ton this week and scoop Adams at every single draft.
Yeah.
He's going to slide.
Look at that, man. Gus Edwards going at pick 17.
Yeah, above Bijan Robinson.
Yeah.
I saw a funny tweet this morning. Something about maybe what's his name? The Falcons head coach, Arthur. Maybe he watched the game last night. Was like, oh yeah, maybe we should do that with our rookie running back too. After getting smashed. Yeah, it's wild too because Hawkinson would be going so much higher without the Kirk injury and the uncertainty there.
All right, I think I will. Jacobs or Pollard? I'm going to take a running back here.
It's so hard to say, right? I would. Granted, I'm terrible at NFL. I would take Jacobs just to not have 2 skill position players on the same team without their quarterback. But I'm a losing NFL player, so don't take my advice too seriously.
Yeah. The only reason I don't mind like Pollard and Lamb is just that dynamic of, similar if you had like, I don't know, maybe not the perfect example, but like Puka and Cooper Kupp, where the quarterback just isn't giving you that 30+ point ceiling generally. And if you could capture, the majority of the points through just Pollard and Lamb without Dak, and then Lamar outscores Dak, which isn't necessarily a super crazy thing. But yeah, this was kind of then my final tiebreaker there since I passed on Jacobs. Although my take on the leverage on Adams is more so on my getting Jacoby, but I'm going to grab Zay Flowers here.
Yeah, and so there's a weird week at tight end as well. I feel like it's like surprisingly there's a decent amount of plays at tight end towards the end. Like I know Njoku went pretty early here to Clay. I like him a lot. I mean, his amount of targets he gets per week is like pretty insane.
Also get the Arizona flow chart. It's still relevant.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then tight end is pretty gross this week. You could, Kyle Pitts.
Ferguson's a fine play.
It would basically be the same thing again where you're doing Ferguson and Lamb without Dak. But I get a little, I prefer like the running back with the wide receiver without the quarterback more, where it's like Dak's probably, if these guys both end up in the optimal, Dak's probably the quarterback with them.
I agree, except for you have Lamar. So then you have one little unique lever where it's like all you need is Lamar to just have like an inkling more points than Dak, which is possible with his rushing equity. And if he puts up a 40 ball and Dak puts up like 30, 35 with like, and it doesn't take much at tight end. It's a gross tight end slate. There's no Kelsey on it.
One thing I kind of do early week when you do get these unique combos, I don't know if I'd say necessarily like chalk it up, but like if I think the amount of Lamar CD combos is going to be just so rare this week, then I'm more inclined to be like, let's just, take the best plays. But tight end is the one that makes sense to scroll a bit. I think past like tight end 5 and 6.
Yep.
Because we've seen how many tight ends go? 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah. So, McBride, Ferguson. So I think just anything in the like 7 to 12 range here makes sense.
I still Logan Thomas is getting insane usage, and like New England isn't really scary, especially if you consider like that, if you want to play the whole, you're going to take away Scary Terry narrative, and then that opens up more to Thomas and stuff. Like that's intriguing to me. You go down like Musgrave, like coming back, like, people are a little off him after some of the injury stuff and everything too. Like I agree. I think.
What's the deal with Waller?
Dude,
well, Daniel Jones said he's going to play, right?
Yeah.
I'm not touching Waller with a hamstring injury. Like I wouldn't at all.
Sorry, guys.
I think it's interesting.
I have a bad habit.
I think Waller in the 6th round is interesting from like a late swap thing. Like,
yeah,
I don't. What would screw you is if he does what he did last week and plays a drive and then leaves the game. But I don't think they would do that twice. Like that to me feels like a one-time thing where he's like, I'm good to go, gets out there and he's like, no, I'm not. And like, are they going to do that again the next week? At like run it back? It doesn't feel likely.
It feels very New York Giants to me. It feels very much like, he's healthy enough to suit up and go out there and then, do it again.
Yep.
Should we fire one more?
I got to get rolling here for a little. Got to get
do it
here. But this was a fun time. If you guys want more drafting goodness, definitely check out our friends over at the Badge Bros. Have some other shows that you guys can dig into. And if you want to see us together Fridays, often on the clock, I team up with those guys and we walk through the Battle Royale slate. I'm sure we will have a lot of different thoughts between now and then. That's always one of the funny things. And as Andy was referencing, when the rankings come out, you'll start to see ADP shift and all of that good stuff once the content machine gets rolling. Any final words for you guys?
No, happy Halloween. Enjoy your first trick or treat. It's going to be fun.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Clay, what about you? Are you going out?
Yeah. No, not going out. I'm not a big Halloween. This is like literally the most I've dressed up in I think like 7 years for Halloween. It was for this stream as randomizer Scott Hansen. I was just to share a funny thing real quick, just that like on our 11.5 hour drive down last Friday, I made Stacy listen to both the JM show and the Badge Bros show.
Oh,
I was trying to get her to type in the chat for me while I was driving, but she wasn't quite down for that. So anyways, it was good times.
I don't think I've ever attempted that. You're a stronger man than me trying to get your significant other to listen to fantasy football content on a road trip.
Hey, well, I had to listen to
I wouldn't risk that
for a couple hours too. So it was,
those podcasts are good. But what are they talking about? Real Housewives or?
Yeah, hell yeah. You know, actually shout out the Brav Bros. We got the Badge Bros and the Brav Bros, and that makes up a lot of my podcasting these days. So
Is that really the name of them?
Yeah, it's fantastic. Like it actually is. Like if you watch any kind of like show on Bravo at all, I recommend the Brav Bros. So maybe we'll have them on someday. We'll do a crossover episode. We'll help facilitate it. We'll get we'll get the bros and the bros. It'll be a good time.
Incredible. All right, guys. Appreciate you hanging out on a Tuesday. Have a great Halloween, and we will see you guys next Tuesday. Peace.